Hello, my name is Margaret Collins, and I never imagined I'd be telling this story if someone had told me years ago that my own daughter, the little girl I once rocked to sleep, the one I gave my youth, my health, and my dreams for, would one day look me in the eye and say I was nothing to her. I would have laughed at the cruelty of such a thought. But life doesn't always break us with strangers. Sometimes it's the people we love most who twist the knife deepest.
It was a quiet morning. The kind of morning where nothing seems unusual and yet everything can change in a single breath. I had woken up early, humming softly to myself as I cooked blueberry pancakes, her favorite since childhood. She was 22 now, living her own life, but when she told me she'd stop by for breakfast, I wanted to make it feel like home, like the old days when she'd come down in pajamas, hair messy, smile wide, and say, "Mom, you make the best pancakes in the world."
When she arrived, my heart lifted. She walked in, beautiful and confident, but there was a hardness in her eyes I didn't recognize. Still, she smiled, leaned down, and kissed my forehead so gently that tears pricked at the corners of my eyes. That single touch reminded me of the little girl I thought I still had. But in an instant, everything changed. Her face hardened, her voice loud, sharp, filled with venom, shattered the air. "You're nothing to me."
The words didn't land at first. They hung in the room, floating, unreal. But then they sank into me like glass cutting from the inside. My knees buckled, and I grabbed the counter to steady myself. I begged her to explain, to tell me this wasn't real, my voice trembling, my hands reaching for hers. But she stepped back, her arms crossed, her eyes colder than winter. Then she did something I'll never forget. She reached into her bag, pulled out a folded paper, and placed it on the table.
In front of me, my hand shook as I opened it. A court notice. Legal documents with my name printed bold at the top. My daughter wasn't just angry. She wasn't just lashing out. She was taking me to court. The words blurred as I tried to read. The smell of burning pancakes filled the kitchen, but I couldn't move. My daughter, the one I carried in my arms, the one I sacrificed for, had just told me I was nothing and handed me papers that could tear apart what little was left of my life. And in that moment, something inside me broke. I didn't yet know why she hated me. I didn't yet know how far this would go, but I knew one thing for certain: my life would never be the same again. I stood frozen in that kitchen, the court notice trembling in my hands as if the paper itself carried weight heavy enough to crush me. My daughter's face didn't soften, not for a second. She just stared, her arms folded, her eyes daring me to say something that might change her mind, but nothing came out. My throat was dry, my mind spinning. I wanted to scream, to grab her shoulders, to shake her and remind her who I was, her mother, the woman who had bled and sacrificed so she could stand there confident and alive. But all I could whisper was, "Why?" She gave a laugh, sharp and bitter, a sound I had never heard from her before. "You'll find out in court," she said, her words cold as steel. Then she turned her back on me, walked toward the door, and without looking over her shoulder, she left. The door slammed so hard behind her that the frames on the wall rattled. And just like that, my home, my kitchen, my heart, all of it felt empty. I sat down at the table, the court notice spread out in front of me. My hands traced the words over and over, but they blurred through my tears. She was suing me. For what? Why? Nothing made sense. Had I done something so unforgivable? Had I failed her in a way I couldn't see? My mind went back over every argument we'd ever had, every slammed door, every silence that lasted too long, but nothing explained this. Nothing justified my child dragging me through a courtroom like I was her enemy. The hours passed in a haze. I didn't eat, didn't drink. I just sat there with the papers and the burned pancakes that still lingered in the air like a cruel joke. I remembered the nights I worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, the winters when I wore the same old coat so she could have new ones, the years I put aside my own dreams to raise her. I thought of all the times I told myself it was worth it because one day she would understand, one day she would see how much she was loved. But now all I could see was her face twisted in anger, screaming at me that I was nothing. By the time the sun set, I had made a decision. I wasn't gonna let her destroy me without answers. If she wanted a fight, I would show her I wasn't as weak as she thought, but I also knew this wasn't just about court papers. Something darker was at play. Someone had planted this poison in her heart, someone who wanted to see me fall, and I promised myself that night, sitting alone at that table, that I would find out who it was, no matter what it cost me. The night felt endless. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, clutching that notice like it was some kind of nightmare I could shake off if I just read it enough times, my chest ached in a way that wasn't just emotional, it was physical. Sharp stabbing. I hadn't cried like that in years. I kept whispering her name into the darkness, hoping somehow she'd hear me and walk back through the door, telling me it was all some cruel mistake. But the house stayed silent. The next morning, I forced myself up and dressed. My hands shook as I dialed the number of the courthouse, confirming the case was real. My daughter had filed for possession. She wanted control of the house, the very roof I had fought to keep over our heads all those years. I hung up the phone and nearly dropped it. My daughter wasn't just pushing me away emotionally. She was trying to erase me completely, to take the one place that still felt like mine. I couldn't sit back. I needed answers. So I went to her apartment. My heart was pounding as I climbed the stairs, praying she'd open the door, that she'd look at me and remember I wasn't her enemy. When the door swung open, it wasn't her face I saw first. It was his. Standing there, half smiling, arms crossed like he owned the place, was Daniel, my ex-husband, the man who had abandoned us years ago, leaving me to pick up the pieces, the man who had cheated, lied, and left me with nothing but bills and a broken heart. And now there he was in my daughter's doorway, as comfortable as if he belonged. Margaret, he said smoothly, like my name was poison on his tongue. Didn't expect to see you here. I froze, my stomach twisting. I pushed past him, calling out for my daughter, and there she was, sitting on the couch, her eyes darting nervously between us. But then she stood, her chin lifting, her voice firm. Mom, you shouldn't be here. You need to leave. I stared at her, then back at Daniel, and the truth slammed into me with a force that nearly knocked me down. This wasn't her idea. This wasn't her anger. He had gotten to her. He had poisoned her heart against me, just like he poisoned our marriage all those years ago. I tried to speak, but he stepped closer, his smirk widening. She knows the truth now. She knows what kind of mother you really were. My daughter's arms folded across her chest, mirroring his stance. She didn't say a word, but her silence told me everything. He had won her over. He had turned my own flesh and blood against me. I left that apartment shaking, my vision blurred with rage and heartbreak. For years I had wondered what revenge might feel like if I ever saw him again, the man who ruined me. But I never imagined his revenge would come through my daughter. And as I walked down those steps, the thought hit me like lightning. This wasn't just about property or anger. This was war, and Daniel had just fired the first shot. I drove home with my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Every red light felt like an eternity, every passing face like a blur I couldn't focus on. The whole world seemed to be spinning, but inside me, everything was stone still, cold, hollow, and echoing with Daniel's smirk. The image of him standing there, shoulder to shoulder with my daughter, haunted me. It wasn't just betrayal, it was annihilation. I stumbled inside, dropped my bag on the floor, and collapsed into the chair by the window. For a long time, I just sat there, staring out, trying to process what had just happened. My daughter, my sweet, innocent child I had once rocked to sleep when she had fevers, whose hand I held when she was scared of the dark, was now standing on the side of the very man who had broken our lives, and worse, she believed him, believed his twisted stories. I wanted to call her, to scream, to beg, to shake sense into her, but then my eyes drifted to that court notice on the table. Cold, formal, merciless. This was not something I could cry my way out of. This wasn't about emotions anymore. This was about power. And if Daniel thought I was gonna lie down and let him erase me, he had forgotten who I was. The next morning, I put on my coat and walked into a lawyer's office. My legs felt weak. My voice trembled when I explained what was happening, but something in me held steady. I had lived through poverty, through heartbreak, through nights where I didn't know if we'd have dinner the next day. I had survived Daniel once. I could survive him again. The lawyer listened carefully, flipping through the notice, frowning as she scanned the papers. Then she looked up at me and said, "You're not powerless here, but we'll have to fight." Her words lit something inside me, a tiny flame at first, but it spread quickly, warming the frozen parts of me that had been numb since the moment my daughter turned away. Fight, that was the word. That was what I had to do, not just for the house, but for myself, for the years of sacrifice, for the mother I had been and still was, even if my daughter couldn't see it anymore. But as I left the office, the cold reality hit again. This wasn't just about legal battles. Daniel was clever, manipulative, and cruel. He didn't fight fair, not when he had poisoned my daughter's heart to get to me. He would come at me from every angle, and I had to be ready. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from me. I could almost hear Daniel's voice, smooth and mocking. "You'll never win, Margaret. She's mine now." My hands clenched into fists, my teeth grinding. Maybe he thought this was the end for me, but he had no idea what I was capable of when someone tried to take everything I had left. And as the clock struck midnight, I whispered into the silence a vow that only I could hear. "You may have my daughter's trust for now, Daniel, but I will not let you destroy me. Not again." The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes from crying, but there was no time to wallow. My phone buzzed, and when I picked it up, my heart skipped a beat. It was a text from my daughter. For a moment, hope fluttered inside me. Maybe she had thought it through. Maybe she realized she'd been too harsh. But when I opened the message, my hands went cold. It read, "Please don't contact me again until the court decides. Daniel says it's better this way. I need time to think. Daniel." Always Daniel. His name was like poison dripping into every corner of my life. My daughter wasn't speaking for herself anymore. Every word she sent me carried his fingerprints. He was pulling her strings like a puppet, and she couldn't even see it. I sat on the couch, staring at those words until they blurred. The girl I raised, the daughter I poured every ounce of love into, was asking me to stay away because of him. That cut deeper than any knife ever could. Later that day, I went back to the lawyer. She explained the paperwork, the legal steps, the upcoming hearings, but I could barely focus. All I could think about was my daughter's face, the way she used to run into my arms when she was little, the way she used to kiss my cheek before bed, and now she was siding with the man who had abandoned us, the man who had collected, cheated, and lied. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house, touching the walls, the frames, the furniture. Every corner had memories, birthdays, Christmas mornings, nights filled with laughter, days filled with tears. This house wasn't just brick and wood. It was the story of my life, the place I had fought to hold together when Daniel left us. Losing it would be like erasing every trace of me, but in the stillness of that night, something shifted inside me. I realized Daniel's greatest weapon wasn't the court papers. It wasn't his money or manipulation. It was my daughter. He was using her as the knife to stab me where it hurt the most. And if I wanted to fight back, I had to do more than just protect my house. I had to find a way to reach her heart again. The next day, I began digging. I pulled out old files, receipts, bank statements. I wanted proof, something that would show my daughter the truth about her father, something undeniable. I knew Daniel had secrets, and I knew if I looked hard enough, I would find them. But as I opened the first dusty box from the closet, my phone buzzed again. It was a call this time. I hesitated, then picked up. And when I heard the voice on the other end, my blood ran cold. When I pressed the phone to my ear, the voice that slithered through the line made my stomach turn. It was Daniel, smooth, confident, the same venomous tone he used years ago when he thought he had me under his thumb. "Well, Margaret," he said, dragging out my name like it was something sour, "I hear you've been busy digging through old boxes. How desperate. Do you really think you can turn her against me? Our daughter knows who the better parent is now. She chose me. For a second, I couldn't breathe. How did he know what I was doing? Had he been watching me, spying on me?" My hands shook as I gripped the phone, trying to keep my voice steady. "She's not choosing you," I said quietly. "She's being blinded by your lies, and one day she'll see the truth." He chuckled, that low, cruel laugh that always sent shivers down my spine. The truth is that house isn't yours anymore. The papers are already in motion, and when the court rules in my favor, you'll be out on the street alone, forgotten. She won't even look back. My chest burned with rage, but underneath it all, fear clawed at me. He sounded so sure, so untouchable. But I forced myself to speak through clenched teeth. "If you think I'm going to just hand over my life, you don't know me anymore, Daniel. I fought once, and I'll fight again." Before he could answer, I hung up, slamming the phone down on the table. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely steady them. His words echoed in my mind, alone, forgotten. He was trying to break me before the battle had even started. I walked back to the closet and stared at the boxes stacked high. Somewhere inside these dusty files lay his undoing. Bank fraud, unpaid debts, secret accounts. I didn't know what I would find, but I knew it would be there. Daniel never lived clean. He always left trails. Hours slipped by as I pored over papers, my eyes burning, my fingers smudged with dust and ink. And then just as exhaustion threatened to pull me under, I froze. A single receipt tucked between old statements caught my eye. It was dated 2 years ago, long after Daniel had left us. The amount was obscene, thousands withdrawn in cash linked to a private account I never knew existed. My heart pounded. What was he hiding? Where was this money going? Suddenly, the shadows in the room felt darker, the silence heavier. I wasn't just fighting for my house anymore. I was holding a weapon that could destroy him. And as I held that receipt in my trembling hand, one thought burned in my mind. Daniel thought he had already won, but he had no idea what I was about to uncover. I sat there staring at that receipt for what felt like hours, the numbers blurring together as my pulse pounded in my ears. Thousands of dollars withdrawn in cash over and over again from an account Daniel had kept hidden. It wasn't just money, it was proof of the kind of man he still was. Proof that he was hiding something big. The next morning, I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. I called my daughter, my voice shaking, desperate to reach her. To my surprise, she picked up. For a moment, I almost cried just hearing her voice, soft and familiar, the voice that used to call me mommy when she was little. "Sweetheart," I said gently, "I need you to come over. There's something I need to show you. Something important, please." She hesitated, and for a long second, I thought she'd hang up, but then she whispered, "Fine, I'll come," but only for a few minutes. When she arrived, she didn't hug me. She didn't even look me in the eye. She just stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her face stiff. That broke me more than anything. Still, I led her to the table where the receipt lay on top of the stack of papers. "Look at this," I urged, sliding it toward her. "Your father has been hiding money, thousands. He's lying to you, and he's not the man you think he is. Please, just see it for yourself." She picked it up, her eyes scanning the numbers. For a brief moment, I saw doubt flicker across her face. My heart leapt. I thought maybe I was finally reaching her, but then she dropped the receipt back on the table like it was trash. "Daniel already told me you'd try this," she said coldly. "He said you'd make up stories, twist things, do anything to keep me from believing in him. He warned me you'd go digging for dirt." Her words stabbed through me. "This isn't a story," I cried, my voice breaking. "It's right there in black and white. Don't you see? He's using you." But she just shook her head. "No, you're the one using me. You can't stand that he and I have a relationship, so you're trying to poison it. I can't do this, Mom. I won't." She turned to leave, her hand already on the door, and panic surged through me. "Please," I begged, tears streaming down my face. "Don't walk away from me again." She paused for the briefest second, and I thought she might turn back. But instead, she said something that shattered me to pieces. "Next time, talk to my lawyer." And then she was gone, leaving me standing in the silence, holding the proof of Daniel's betrayal in my hand, and realizing my own daughter had chosen to believe his lies over my truth. After she left, the house felt emptier than ever. The walls, once full of laughter and warmth, now seemed cold, echoing back only my own sobs. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the receipt over and over, tracing the numbers with trembling fingers. Every dollar told a story, every transaction whispered a secret Daniel thought I would never find. And now that I had found it, something inside me hardened. This wasn't just about my house anymore. This was about exposing him, about reclaiming my life, and if possible, reaching my daughter before it was too late. I couldn't afford to cry for long. I had to act. The first step was figuring out where the money went. I spent hours that night digging through old bank statements, cross-referencing the withdrawals, the transfers, the unmarked deposits. My eyes burned, my back ached, my fingers were raw from flipping through papers and scribbling notes, but I didn't stop. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Accounts linked to a company I had never heard of, shell corporations, false names. Daniel had been hiding more than just money. He had been building a fortress, keeping secrets that could ruin everything. By midnight, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in years, hope. Not the fragile hope that whispered in dreams, but the kind that fueled action. Daniel had underestimated me. He had thought his daughter's anger alone would keep me paralyzed. He had thought that hiding in the shadows of his lies would protect him. He was wrong. I made a plan. I would document everything, every account, every transfer, every hidden asset. I would find witnesses, evidence, anything that would show not just my daughter, but the court who Daniel really was. And I would do it quietly, no rash moves, no desperation, just patience and precision. I had learned from the years he had tried to destroy me that the quiet moves were often the deadliest. That night, I also sent a careful indirect message to my daughter, something that didn't accuse, didn't beg, just offered the chance to see the truth on her own terms. I didn't know if she would respond. I didn't know if she would even look, but I couldn't stop trying. Somewhere inside, I still believed there was a part of her that remembered me, that trusted me enough to see beyond the lies. As I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized something. Daniel thought he had won. He thought he had broken me, but I was already moving. I didn't have the house back yet, and my daughter was still out of reach. But I had found the first thread in a web of lies, and if I pulled hard enough, if I followed it to the end, I would unravel everything he had built. And maybe, just maybe, I would reach my daughter before it was too late. The fire inside me had returned. Quiet, patient, unyielding, I was no longer the woman crying at the kitchen table. I was a mother who had been pushed to the edge. An edge made her sharp, dangerous, and unstoppable. The next morning, I woke with a resolve I hadn't felt in months. The grief, the fear, the endless spinning of my mind, they were still there, but they no longer held me hostage. I had a path now, and I would follow it no matter how long it took. First, I needed evidence strong enough that even Daniel couldn't twist it, no matter how clever he thought he was. I started by contacting a financial investigator I had used years ago when Daniel left us in debt. I gave her every paper, every note, every scrap I had uncovered. I asked her to trace every dollar, to map the hidden accounts, the shell corporations, the mysterious transfers. It felt like opening a Pandora's box, each document revealing more lies, more deception. By late afternoon, she called me back, her voice low, almost whispering, "Margaret, you've got enough here to not just challenge him, but destroy him legally. He's been hiding a lot: fraud, tax evasion, unreported assets. This is serious, very serious." I felt a surge of something wild and raw inside me, power. For the first time in months, I didn't feel helpless. Daniel had built his empire thinking he was untouchable, and now every hidden corner of his life was exposed in my hands. But then doubt crept in, the kind that made my chest tighten. My daughter, even with all this evidence, she might not believe me. Daniel had been feeding her lies for months, twisting her memories, painting me as the villain. How could I reach her? How could I make her see the truth without pushing her further into his grasp? That evening, I decided to test the waters carefully. I sent a simple, subtle message, not accusatory, not desperate, just a thread for her to pull if she chose to. Check your father's latest company filings. You might be surprised at what you find. I didn't expect a response. I couldn't. But then minutes later, my phone buzzed. A single word from her. What? My heart skipped. That one word was enough. Doubt. Curiosity. Maybe, just maybe, she had begun to see cracks in the world Daniel had built around her. I didn't reply immediately. I let her wonder. I let her feel that little twist of unease that could pull her toward the truth without me forcing it. In the meantime, I focused on building my case, documenting every angle, every shred of proof that would make Daniel's lies impossible to defend. Late at night, I sat at the kitchen table with the receipts and statements spread around me like a battlefield. Every number, every signature, every hidden transfer was a weapon. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt hope, not just for the house, not just for the court, but for my daughter. I realized then that Daniel's arrogance was his weakness. He had believed that loyalty could be manufactured, that love could be controlled, but truth, no matter how buried, has a way of reaching those who need it most. And I was going to make sure my daughter saw it before it was too late. The fire inside me was no longer quiet. It was alive, sharp, and hungry. And Daniel had no idea how far I was willing to go. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse with my chest tight and my hands trembling, but my mind focused like a laser. Every step I took felt heavy, but it was weighted with purpose, not fear. I had spent sleepless nights gathering every shred of evidence, documenting every hidden account, every suspicious transaction Daniel had made. I wasn't just going in to defend my house anymore, I was going to expose him for the manipulator he truly was. Sitting in the waiting room surrounded by strangers and the muffled hum of court officials, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was the first time in months that I felt some measure of control. The legal papers, the receipts, the investigator's report, all of it was proof, sharp and undeniable. Daniel's carefully crafted empire of lies had cracks now, and I was going to push my way through them. When my name was called, I walked up to the clerk and filed the first motion, a request to freeze Daniel's hidden accounts and compel full disclosure of his finances. The words on the papers felt like armor in my hands, each signature a small victory against the man who had tried to destroy me. I watched the clerk stamp them official and final, and for the first time I felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could win this fight. Later, as I left the courthouse, my phone buzzed. I hesitated before looking at it. A single message from my daughter appeared. I looked, but I don't understand it all. My heart leapt. She had looked. Even if she didn't fully understand, the tiniest crack had appeared in the armor Daniel had built around her mind. That small opening was all I needed to start rebuilding the bridge between us. I didn't reply immediately. I needed her to feel it. Curiosity, doubt, the first whisper of realization that maybe everything Daniel had told her wasn't the truth. Meanwhile, I returned home and spread out all my documents on the table. The trail was messy, convoluted, and deliberate, but the pattern was undeniable. I traced every withdrawal, every hidden account, every falsified transaction. Hours passed as I worked, and as night fell, I allowed myself a brief moment of reflection. For months, I had felt powerless, betrayed, and broken. Daniel had seemed untouchable, but now, with the law and evidence on my side, I had begun to shift the balance. He had underestimated me, and that had always been his greatest mistake. Later that night, I finally texted my daughter back. Take your time, look carefully. I promise you, the truth is there. I didn't know how she would react or how long it would take for her to see it, but I knew one thing: I had taken the first step. I had moved quietly but decisively into the battlefield, and Daniel, arrogant and self-assured, had no idea what was coming. For the first time in months, I allowed myself a small, dangerous thought. I wasn't just fighting to keep a house anymore, I was fighting to reclaim my daughter and to make Daniel pay for every lie, every betrayal, every moment he had tried to destroy us. The following days were a tense blur. I barely slept, barely ate, constantly reviewing every paper, every transaction, every detail I had uncovered. But amidst the chaos, there were small signs, tiny sparks that gave me hope. My daughter hadn't blocked me, hadn't completely shut me out. She had looked at the documents. That alone told me that maybe, just maybe, she was starting to see cracks in the story. Daniel had fed her. Then came the first real sign. I received a cautious text. Mom, I'm confused. Some of this doesn't make sense. Why would he hide so much? My heart nearly stopped. For the first time in months, my daughter was asking questions that Daniel hadn't prepared her to ask. A small voice of doubt had emerged, and it was growing. But as I processed this, a chilling thought hit me. Daniel wasn't going to let this go. He was clever, manipulative, and ruthless. I had already seen how far he would go to control our daughter. He would counter every move I made, push every button, and try to tighten the grip he had built. I had to be faster, sharper, and smarter than him. That night, I found myself going over every detail, imagining his possible moves. I realized he had left traces, small, almost insignificant details, but enough for me to exploit: hidden contracts, shell accounts, unsigned forms. If I exposed even a fraction of what I had found, it could destroy him legally and morally. The next morning, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. My stomach twisted. It was Daniel. I see you've been busy, he said, his voice low, measured, full of that familiar menace. Do you really think you can pull this off? You're only making things worse for yourself and for her. Don't forget, your daughter trusts me, not you. I could feel the weight of his arrogance press against me through the phone, but instead of fear, a cold clarity settled over me. I'm not trying to win her trust, I said quietly, steadily. I'm trying to show her the truth, and you can't stop that. There was a pause on the line, and I could almost hear his teeth grinding. "You don't know who you're dealing with, Margaret? I know exactly who I'm dealing with," I whispered, "and this time I'm ready." After the call, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the stack of documents, the receipts, the papers I had gathered. My daughter's words floated in my mind. Some of this doesn't make sense. That doubt, fragile as it was, had been planted, and now it was my job to nurture it carefully without pushing her further away. For the first time in months, I felt a quiet surge of power. Daniel thought he had cornered me. He thought he had destroyed me, but he had underestimated the strength of a mother who refuses to be broken. And if he thought he could control my daughter forever, he was about to learn just how dangerous the truth could be when it finally came to light. It started with small things, messages that weren't blocked, hesitant questions that appeared in the middle of the night. My daughter was no longer responding with cold distance or anger. Instead, there was hesitation, uncertainty, a shadow of doubt I hadn't seen before. I knew Daniel's grip on her wasn't complete, and for the first time, I felt a spark of hope that maybe she could see the truth on her own. One evening, I received a quiet text. "Mom, can we talk? Not about court, just things." My hand shook as I read it. After months of cold silence, those words felt like a lifeline. I didn't overthink it. I wrote back, "Of course, come by when you're ready." When she arrived, she didn't hug me, didn't immediately speak. She just stood there, twisting her hands, eyes downcast. I could see the conflict in her, the part of her still loyal to Daniel, fighting against the part that remembered me, the mother who had always loved her unconditionally. "I found some of the things you sent me," she whispered finally. "The accounts, the receipts, some of it doesn't make sense. Why would he hide so much money? Why would he lie?" Her voice trembled and I felt my chest tighten. This was it, the first real crack in the armor Daniel had built around her. I reached out, my hand steady now, and gently said, "You're starting to see it, aren't you? I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted you to know the truth." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, she looked like the little girl I used to know. I don't know what to think. Everything I believed, everything he told me, I don't know what's real anymore. That admission hit me like a wave. She was confused, yes, but she was listening. She was questioning, and that meant there was a path back. A way to reach her heart without confrontation, without pushing her further into Daniel's lies. I spent the night with her quietly, showing her the evidence, explaining what I had found. Not in anger, not in accusation, but gently, carefully, letting the truth speak for itself. And as the hours passed, I saw the first signs of understanding, the hesitant beginnings of clarity. By the time she left, she hadn't fully embraced the truth. She wasn't ready to stand with me yet, but she had seen the cracks. She had started questioning, and that I knew was the first step toward freedom from Daniel's control, from the lies, from the betrayal that had kept us apart for so long. As the door closed behind her, I felt a flicker of hope mixed with the heavy weight of the battle still to come. Daniel had no idea that his carefully constructed plan was unraveling, that his greatest weapon, my daughter, was starting to see him for what he really was. And when the time came, he would regret ever thinking he could destroy us. The next few weeks were a blur of court dates, meetings with lawyers, and quiet nights spent organizing evidence. Every step I took felt like walking on a tightrope, balancing my anger, my heartbreak, and my desperate hope for my daughter. But I had noticed a change. She was calling, sending messages in the middle of the night, asking questions I had never thought she would. Questions that Daniel couldn't control, that he hadn't prepared her to ask. Meanwhile, Daniel's arrogance began to crack. I could sense it from his calls, from the way his voice shook when he realized I was moving methodically, carefully, exposing every hidden account, every lie he had built his fortress upon. He had always underestimated me, and now that miscalculation was becoming costly. One evening, I received a message from my daughter. "Mom, I saw something today, something he didn't want me to see. I think you were right." My hands trembled as I read it. Those words were tiny, fragile, but they carried immense weight. After months of distance, rejection, and pain, she was finally starting to see the truth. The next day in court, my lawyer presented the evidence we had meticulously gathered. I sat in the gallery, my hands folded, feeling every heartbeat echoing through my chest. The judge examined the documents. asked questions, and listened as my lawyer detailed the hidden accounts, the transfers, and the misrepresentations Daniel had made. Each point felt like a small victory, a step closer to reclaiming what had been taken from me. But the battle wasn't over. Daniel was still aggressive, still confident in his manipulation. He stood there, trying to argue, trying to sway the court. But I could see the cracks in his composure. I could see the panic in his eyes when certain documents were highlighted, proof he could not deny. After the session, I stepped outside and saw my daughter waiting quietly. She didn't approach at first. She just watched me, hesitant, conflicted. I took a slow breath and walked toward her, my voice calm but firm. I know this has been hard, but you're seeing it now, aren't you? The truth. Her eyes welled with tears, and she nodded slowly. I don't understand everything yet, but I think I'm starting to. That moment, fragile as it was, felt like the first victory I had hoped for. I knew there was still a long road ahead. Daniel would fight back, he would manipulate, and he would try to reclaim his hold over her. But for the first time in months, I felt like the tide had shifted. That night, as I sat at the kitchen table alone, reviewing the next set of documents, I realized something. The battle for my home, my life, and my daughter's trust wasn't just legal, it was emotional, psychological, and personal. And for the first time in months, I felt a quiet, burning certainty that I could win, not just for myself, but for the little pieces of family that Daniel had tried to destroy. The fire inside me had grown stronger, sharper, unrelenting. Daniel may have thought he could destroy us, but I was no longer the powerless woman he had abandoned all those years ago. And soon he would see that every lie, every manipulation, every betrayal he had committed would come back to him. The final hearing felt like the culmination of every sleepless night, every tear, every betrayal. I walked into the courtroom with my head held high, my heart pounding, knowing this was more than a fight for a house. It was for my dignity, my life, and my daughter who had once turned away from me. Daniel sat across from me, confident at first, but as the judge examined the evidence, hidden accounts, transfers, and lies, his arrogance faltered. Every carefully built deception crumbled under the weight of truth. My daughter sat beside me, hesitant at first, then slowly looked up, recognition and understanding dawning in her eyes. When the verdict was delivered, relief and triumph surged through me. The house was mine, the evidence undeniable, and the bonds with my daughter were mending. She hugged me tightly, tears streaming down both our faces. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered. "I should have trusted you." I held her close, whispering back, "We're here now, that's what matters." Sitting later in my reclaimed home, I realized the heartbreak, the betrayal, the sleepless nights had all led to this moment. The fire Daniel tried to extinguish had grown instead. I had reclaimed my life, my home, and my daughter's love. They thought they could destroy me, but I am unbreakable.